Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
To find them alive were definitely a good positive outcome.
A father's difficult choice. 2 kids spend the night alone on a BC mountain waiting to be rescued. And the Vancouver Aquarium sues. The aquarium lost millions from the cetacean ban. Now it wants the city and park board to pay. Plus,
there's also helicopters that are bucketing the fire, and there's air tankers and heavy equipment that are working.
Alberta's wildfire season starts with a roar. Thousands are forced to flee their homes as fires close in.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Leanne Young. Mike and Anita are off tonight. An agonizing decision for a family lost in the wilderness with 2 young kids on a hike gone wrong. Do you stay with your children or leave them alone to go find help? That's what a father faced on a Coquitlam mountain last night. And as Briar Stewart tells us, his difficult choice led to a dramatic rescue.
Rescuers described it as a miraculous outcome after what would have been a very long and agonizing night.
It was really elation because this is very rugged terrain where they were lost.
The entire ordeal began yesterday. A father went out hiking with his 6-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son. They were in a densely forested area known for bears, about 45 minutes east of Vancouver. They're from the U.S. and ended up getting off the trail and falling down a creek drainage ditch. At that point, the dad had to make a tough decision. The terrain was steep. There was no cell phone coverage. It was getting late, so he gave his children some warm clothes and told them to stay put. He hiked out more than a kilometer until he got cell phone service and called for help. Teams searched through the night and finally found the children this morning.
Kids did what they were supposed to do. They stayed put, and they were invisible, pretty much like a rock. They were hiding underneath a gray sweatshirt.
They were then roped in and transported to a waiting ambulance and the relieved father. Rescuers said the kids were wet, cold, and hungry, but otherwise fine. Officials say the lesson is to make sure that if you're heading out, to leave a trip plan and tell others what time you'll be back.
If a trip plan had been left here, perhaps the father would have been able to stay with the kids and someone else would have phoned us for help. You're always better if you're hiking in a party to keep the party together rather than split it up.
But in this case, there was a happy ending. After a long, cold night, the family was reunited. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
And it was a busy long weekend for rescue teams on the island as well. Aerosmith Search and Rescue were called at 2 in the morning on Saturday to help find a missing 60-year-old woman. With the help of a team from Nanaimo, they were able to locate her. She was cold but otherwise unhurt. Later that day, they were called to find and evacuate an injured ATV rider. The victim was airlifted to Victoria General Hospital with severe but non-life-threatening injuries. And it was a raucous scene at the front gates of the Vancouver Aquarium today as protesters rallied outside for several hours. As Belle Puri explains, the demonstration was about a legal fight between the aquarium, the City of Vancouver, and the Park Board.
No quiet tickets!
Demonstrations are nothing new to the Vancouver Aquarium, but this one had a slightly different focus from others in the past that argued against whales and dolphins in captivity. This was in opposition to an aquarium lawsuit against the City of Vancouver and its park board over a ban on cetaceans in captivity.
We don't feel that the Vancouver taxpayers should be on the hook for their continual stream of dead cetaceans that are unrelated to anything other than entertainment and selfish entertainment at that.
The ban was implemented in 2017. According to court documents, the aquarium says attendance has dropped 13% in the last 2 years. Based on admission rates, it says that's resulted in a revenue loss of $4 million a year. As well, it says the ban has had a costly price tag on its plans for a development project. Starting in the early 2000s, the aquarium began on a $100 million revitalization that included substantially expanded facilities for cetaceans. When the ban was voted on, the aquarium was just about to begin Phase 2 construction. In relation to the lawsuit, the aquarium's parent company issued this statement. We made a commitment in January 2018 to no longer display cetaceans in Stanley Park, and we continue to honor that commitment. with the exception of any rescued whales or dolphins that may need emergent temporary care. The Vancouver Park Board responded that it's reviewing the claim with legal counsel and considering its options going forward.
Respect the ban! Not the same! Respect the ban!
Few, if any, visitors, many of them families with young children, were dissuaded by the protesters.
We had a conversation about that everybody's entitled to their own opinions and that they can express them.
We're just here too, and she gets to see things that otherwise she wouldn't be able to see.
I understand what they're saying, I guess. But I think education is a really important part of it. And, I'm bringing my daughter here to educate her.
The aquarium has no whales in captivity, just one dolphin rescued from fishing nets many years ago. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Spring is here, and you know what that means? Babies, lots of animal babies. But a wildlife rescue center in Langley is asking people to call them first before bringing in an animal they think may be orphaned. Critter Care Wildlife Society cares for and rehabilitates animals native to BC. So far this year, about 556 animals have been brought to the center, from fawns to raccoons, squirrels, opossums, and rabbits, even a couple of bear cubs. Baby animals can often appear orphaned because many species leave their young, sometimes up to 12 hours at a time, to search for food.
So if you take that baby and you bring it to us not confirming if it is orphaned or not, it's a lot harder to take a baby back to mom than just leave it for mom in the first place.
4 fawns were brought into the center over the weekend. 2 of them will be released back to where they were found in Abbotsford in August. Time for your first look at the weather, and for that, meteorologist Brett Soderholm joins us. So Brett, I'm looking out the studio windows and I can see people have their umbrellas and the windshield wipers are going. So you nailed this forecast, basically.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to be right is the thing. This was the one day of the long weekend to be looking out for that rain, and certainly it was happening fairly widespread, not even just across the local Vancouver area, but I wanted to give you a wide shot at the radar here. We're actually seeing much needed rain going across the state of Washington, and you may or may not know, but unfortunately that area has actually needed to declare a state of emergency owing to drought conditions in a lot of the region. So when we get a little bit closer to home, you're going to see that this is the showers themselves winding down. And as we get into the upcoming week, I've got good news for you. There's probably not a lot more rain in the forecast.
All right, that sounds excellent. Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
Realtors in West Vancouver are offering deep discounts on homes, everything from the luxury to the modest. So how low might they go and how long could the discounts last? That story is next. Welcome back. Housing prices are down and so are sales in the Vancouver area. It's especially obvious in West Vancouver, where homes are going for millions less than they did a couple years ago. And as Andrea Ross reports, some wonder how far this market correction will go.
For almost $13 million, you could say this oceanfront mansion in White Cliff Park is a deal. It's sat empty since going on the market last year. But 3 years ago, it would have been listed for a couple $1 million more.
It's like selling swimsuits in the fall or in the winter because there's not as many people looking for swimsuits in the fall and the winter. So some of them have to be discounted.
Taylor says sales of houses worth $6 million or more are down since 2016, and the pool of buyers for homes like these has thinned out. He sums it up to a perfect storm of weakened international markets, new mortgage rules, and provincial taxes meant to cool the market. Even on Gordon Avenue in West Vancouver, the sellers of this modest house took a hit. Bought in 2017 for almost $2.8 million, it just sold for slightly over $2 million, a loss of over $700,000. David Robinson has lived in the area for almost 30 years. He's not surprised it sold for less, considering efforts made to correct the market.
Prices go down to hopefully more realistic levels, but still ill-affordable for all our kids. And that's the concern I have. So I have no problems in the prices going down. And I mean, how many young families can come here now and buy?
Robinson says high prices have changed his neighborhood. There are fewer kids and neighbors come and go. For those whose livelihoods depend on the market, it's a waiting game to see what happens next.
I believe, and we all believe, that we got something pretty special here and sort of weather the storm and push through, and property values will end up probably where they should end up.
Cautious optimism despite no sign of when prices will stabilize or whether this is the beginning of a bubble bursting. Andrea Ross, CBC News, West Vancouver.
Google has announced it will stop giving Chinese smartphone manufacturer Huawei access to its Android operating system. It's a significant blow for the tech giant. Outside of China, Huawei devices currently run on Android and comes with Google apps pre-installed. As the CBC's Jacqueline Hansen explains, the change will only affect new devices.
In Huawei's biggest market, most Google services are already banned by the Chinese government. But elsewhere, where Google and its Android operating system are popular, Huawei devices rely on it.
So I would use Google Maps anymore, so for that reason I won't buy Huawei.
Future Huawei phones could be cut off from all Google services. The U.S. government is forcing companies to cut ties with Huawei unless they get special approval. It has accused the company of espionage. But a spokesman for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the U.S. is trying to spread rumors and smear other countries' enterprises.
Huawei needs this to be resolved really, really quickly to make sure it doesn't lose all of that great momentum it's got in the marketplace that has got it to be #2 worldwide right now and a clear aspiration to be #1.
After the company was blacklisted, Huawei's CEO told reporters that it doesn't engage in spying, and he hinted at the possibility of pulling out of the U.S. The tech giant may not need Google either. It's working on its own operating system.
So it may be that paradoxically it's Google that ends up more harmed, because Huawei is absolutely huge in developing countries and with young users.
But it could also further shake confidence in Huawei at a time when governments around the world are trying to decide whether to allow its next generation 5G technology or ban that too. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
Donald Trump is declaring victory in his trade dispute with Mexico and Canada. Washington has been keen to paint the news as a win for farmers, Trump's core supporters. The president needs the momentum as he faces a new front. As Ellen Morrow tells us, sorting out his trade war with China will be a much tougher road ahead.
Man, this is a lot of people.
As tariffs fall between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., President Trump took a victory lap.
We have saved America. We made America great again, and we're going to keep America great. That's what it is.
Canada's tariffs targeted U.S. farmers. But even with the tariffs now lifted, those farmers are still set to struggle as some of the biggest losers in Trump's trade war with China.
China was our main customer for soybeans, and they're not buying.
Farm bankruptcies in the Midwest are up, crops are stockpiled with nowhere to go, and anxiety is rising.
The issues now really got a lot of farmers discouraged. Well, we're all being affected. Everybody is really getting drained on their financial resources.
President Trump has offered a positive spin on Twitter, writing, "Our great patriot farmers will be one of the biggest beneficiaries of what is happening now," and incorrectly describing tariffs as massive payments being made to the United States. But the president is concerned enough that his administration is offering bailout packages to farmers that could total $30 billion.
These are the items that we've had to raise prices on.
Okay. And there's a lot more items than just these.
A lot more items than just these.
The tariffs aren't only hurting farmers. At this hardware store, prices have gone up on more than 3,000 products.
It's painful. Our customers come in and they see the higher prices and they don't fully understand why.
The president's positive messaging is all about 2020. Farmers are an important part of his base. He needs to reassure them along with American consumers. Meanwhile, efforts to reach a deal with China continue. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington. A baseball player from Vancouver is turning heads in Quebec. Tyson Gillies recently joined the Quebec City Capitale. The 30-year-old faces some challenges his teammates don't because he's legally deaf. Gillies spoke with Radio-Canada's Jean-Philippe Martin about how he adapts on the field.
Do it. A couple years ago when I was playing here and seeing the electricity in the crowd and the passion that this town has for baseball, it was noticeable right away. I got booed by this home crowd also, so being able to, me personally, hear that, I was like, that's what I want to be a part of. I want to be here, a part of a crowd with that kind of energy. This town is very engaged in baseball, and it makes it very exciting to come out here every day. Yeah, so far so good. The clubhouse is amazing. The team is amazing. Everybody's connecting really well, so fast, and honestly, it's probably one of the most fun clubhouses I've been a part of ever in my baseball career so far. Put it in there. They didn't find out till I was hearing impaired till 4.5 because I was reading lips at such a young age. We laugh about it because I'm at the plate sometimes, my bat will break, and the umpire, and I have to pause the game because I don't hear my own bat break at the box. But I just have to stay engaged all the time, every pitch, and I always have to tell myself, I got to know better than anybody on the field what's going on, who's on the bases, what I have to do when the ball comes to me. So I definitely have to focus a lot more. Oh, very good at reading lips. Yeah. So I think a couple teams pick up on that too, because basically I have my binoculars over here in the dugout trying to see what the pitching coaches are saying to the pitchers. So.
Right. Do you really?
No, but I got good sight, so I don't need them.
Un de nos 4 vétérans, ça va être un des leaders dans cette équipe-là. Il a une feuille de route très impressionnante. C'est un gros prospect, un gros espoir dans l'organisation des Mariners, entre autres. Le plus évident, c'est quand il est sur les buts, comme coureur. Il faut qu'on l'aide à dire où les joueurs sont en défensive derrière lui, au deuxième but. Fait que normalement, c'est un signal verbal que je fais le coach au 3. Puis là, on fait un signal visuel du coach au premier but à la place, parce qu'il est quand même dans son champ de vision. C'est drôle, mais c'est quand même notre 3e joueur sourd. C'est fou là, dans les capitales au fil des ans.
I'm not going to say it was easy. There was definitely times that I had to go through adversity and challenges myself and make sure not to get insecure and down on myself. But the biggest thing coming up that I had to do was I had to overwork everybody. And that was the way for me to kind of make scouts and colleges overlook my disability and, not think too much about it and say, hey, that's Tyson, not the legally deaf baseball player. Hey, there's Tyson, you're working hard again today. To be honest with you, I think we have a very strong team. The only thing I want to achieve is I want everybody to have a good commodity in the clubhouse. Everybody get along, pay it forward with each other because the strength in there translates out here, and that's very important. So if that's one thing I can tell the young kids, is be a good teammate because, the baseball gods are watching, and karma's a big thing in this game. So just be together, and you'll see what happens. Nice.
While the wildfire situation here in BC has largely died down, east of us in Alberta, things are ramping up. We'll take you there next, where fire threatens towns and villages. And a live look from our studios here out towards downtown Vancouver. A wet and cool day to wrap up the long weekend. But what does the work week ahead look like? Brett will be back with your full weather forecast next.
In December, an arrest was made that put Canada into the middle of a trade war between the United States and China.
Ms. Mung, what do you have to say to the charges?
Download Sanction today at cbc.ca/sanctioned or wherever you get your podcasts.
Wildfire crews in northern Alberta are trying to get a handle on 6 wildfires burning out of control. One has doubled in size since yesterday to more than 69,000 hectares. And as the fires force some people out of their homes, others are being allowed to return. But as Rafi Boudjikanian reports, they're being told to keep their bags packed.
Hold on the camper.
Dustin Brown's been here before. He was in Fort McMurray when it had to deal with one of the biggest wildfires in Alberta's history 3 years ago. This time, he and his wife are packing in a hurry.
Even though they say, yeah, you're not on mass evacuation right now, but be ready. There's no risk taking here. They said that last time too. And look what happened in Fort Mac. I wasn't going to risk it, not with the kids, the wife, the dog.
The nearly 90 residents of Marlborough were forced from their homes last night. Today they were let back in but remain on notice. Georgina Gaucher is gathering her belongings but staying put.
If I'm going to leave, you know, if they tell me to leave, I'll leave and leave everything, because this is only material things. Yeah. Our life, my children, grandchildren, they're the most important thing in my life.
Firefighters are trying to save it all, pushing back the flames as best they can, both near Marlborough and 5 other areas throughout Alberta, including the biggest fire so far, 8 hours north of Edmonton near High Level. It's been evacuated after a day residents there were put on alert, an example, officials say, of how fast things can change.
It's been hot and dry for quite some time now in northern Alberta, and strong winds like this are going to make fires that spread very rapidly.
Back in Marlborough, no need to tell the Browns twice.
It's still hard to accept the fact that it's happening all over again. It's a little more touchy right now. I mean, there's not much we can do, but we just kind of take it as it comes, and as long as we're together, that's all that matters.
Natural Resources Canada is telling Albertans there could be a significant number of fires this season, even if they can't predict whether the damage and disruption will be worse than normal. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Marlborough, Alberta.
Well, and Brett Sutterholm joins us again. Scary situation out in Alberta.
Really just some horrifying imagery there. And I mean, it brings to mind, of course, what was happening in Fort Mac back 3 years ago now.
Absolutely.
And yeah, something I'm keeping a close eye on, of course, in Alberta, and I'll actually be talking about that later on in my segment. But over in BC, we're actually a little bit more fortunate.
We're hoping that we can send this Pacific Coast rain over there.
Yes, I feel like they can definitely use it a bit more. So on that note, yeah, if you had a chance to get outside this morning, I wanted to show you what it looked like. This was definitely that rainy day of the weekend that I was talking about. Not that I wanted to be right here, but it certainly was a little bit more dismal today, and certainly cooler. I was noticing some of the temperatures at Vancouver Airport never actually got above 14 degrees today, so it was only 2 degrees warmer than our overnight low temperatures. And you're probably wondering, okay, well, it's the start of a new work week ahead. Is there going to be more of that in the forecast? And the short answer is not really. We're going to actually be dealing with relatively good conditions for this upcoming week, and by good, I mean dry, with a little bit of that sun coming through. Now, in terms of what we can be expecting throughout the day on Tuesday, it really is going to largely be a dry day with just simply the risk of a passing shower here or there, especially when you consider parts of western Metro Vancouver. So that's going to be something to watch. But as we get into the future, it's going to be looking a little bit nicer. Temperatures tomorrow are certainly going to be feeling a lot warmer. Downtown, likely around 18, maybe even 19 degrees. The Tri-City, Surrey's New West, everyone's kind of hovering around that 20-degree mark. So that is some good news. Now, back to the notice about Alberta. So these were some of the wildfires of note that we're tracking. There is one in High Level with that whole town right now just to the south, the wildfire rather, just to the south of the town. Town is now getting evacuated as we speak, about 3,700 people there. And if you're noticing this time step up here, we're going through the entire week, and there isn't really rain in the forecast until essentially Friday. Closer to home, that situation is going to be very similar to us as well. We're not really going to be looking at rain until the chance Wednesday afternoon, and then again perhaps on Thursday, but it really is going to be more so on Friday, where current models indicate that we could be getting into some of that wet weather. In terms of our 5-day forecast ahead, here's what I was talking about for tomorrow. Largely a rain-free day, but just a slight chance, especially for showers first thing into the morning. Wednesday and Thursday looking quite nice, warmer. This is about 5 degrees above seasonal. Temperatures in and around the 20s. And then by the time we get into Friday and Saturday, that's when it's going to be returning to a little bit more below seasonal. At that point in time, worth mentioning that our overnight lows are still not going to be too far away from where they should be, so definitely not overly chilly, but still bring a light jacket just in case.
I didn't realize that we were so high above seasonal.
Yeah, seasonal is about 17 degrees right now in the city of Vancouver. So when you see
temperatures, I thought the 20 was just fine.
Well, I know nobody's going to complain about it being 20. That's absolutely right. But those would be more indicative of, say, around June. So it's just a few weeks away.
Just getting ahead of ourselves a little bit.
Exactly.
Okay, gorgeous weather ahead. Thank you so much, Brett.
You're welcome.
And thank you to all of you for tuning in. That does it for us. You can always find our news program online at cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock after the National. And it'll be more of me and Brett again.
Yay!
Okay, all right. We'll see you guys later.
Have a good one.